The morning light spilled softly across my apartment, catching on the edge of the marble countertop and the gold frame of the mirror I'd almost forgotten was there. I stood in front of it, adjusting the cuff of my cream silk blouse, noticing how steady my hands were now. No shaking. No hesitation. Just calm. My phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. I didn't need to open the message to know what it was about. Somehow, your body remembers things before your mind allows it to. The air felt heavier. My chest tightened, not with fear, but with something quieter. Resolution. I picked up the phone. Nathan received the documents this morning. The words sat there, simple and final. I exhaled slowly, staring out the floor-to-ceiling window at the city below. Cars moved like tiny, obedient lines. Everything in order. Everything moving forward. I pressed my thumb against the smooth glass, grounding myself in the present. 2 years ago, on our anniversary, I had stood across from Nathan Collins in a crowded restaurant, smiling while he dismantled me with laughter and careless words. I remembered the way the room had blurred, how I'd felt smaller with every sentence he spoke. Now, I lived alone in a space I paid for myself. My name stood alone on the lease. My mornings were quiet. My nights were peaceful. I glanced at my left hand. No ring. No mark where it used to be. The divorce papers didn't raise their voice. They didn't mock him in front of strangers. But I knew something he didn't yet understand. They would humiliate him far more than he ever humiliated me. The restaurant had smelled like rosemary and expensive wine, the kind of place Nathan liked because it impressed people. Low lighting, white tablecloths, soft music that made conversations feel important. It was our 5th anniversary, and I had spent an hour curling my hair, choosing a navy blue dress I knew he once said made me look elegant enough. I remember touching the small silver necklace at my throat as we sat down. A nervous habit. I kept telling myself this night mattered. Nathan raised his glass halfway through dinner, tapping it with his fork. Conversations around us softened. Faces turned. I felt a flutter in my chest. Hope, foolish and fragile. "This," he said, smiling wide, "is my wife, Lauren Hayes. 5 years in, and she's still exactly the same." A few people chuckled. He continued before I could breathe. No ambition. No real career. Still clinging to ideas that never go anywhere. The laughter landed harder this time. Someone across the table looked down at their plate. I stared at Nathan, waiting for him to stop, to laugh and say he was joking. He didn't. "She wanted to start her own thing once," he added, waving his hand like it was nothing. Cute, right? But some people just aren't built for more. My throat closed. I could taste metal. My hands tightened around my napkin so hard my fingers hurt. I felt heat crawl up my neck, into my face, but I forced a smile, the kind women learn early. The kind that keeps the peace while breaking something inside you. Nathan leaned closer, lowering his voice just enough to pretend this wasn't cruelty. "Relax. I'm just being honest." Honest. The word echoed as I excused myself to the restroom, my heels clicking too loudly against the floor. Inside, I locked myself into a stall and pressed my forehead against the door. My reflection stared back at me from the mirror later, eyes glossy, lipstick still perfect, dignity hanging by a thread. When I returned, dinner continued like nothing had happened. Nathan talked about himself, his deals, his future. I nodded when expected. I shrank when necessary. At the end of the night, I reached into my purse and felt the anniversary card I'd written him. Pages filled with gratitude, love, belief. I didn't give it to him. Instead, I folded it once. Then again. That night, lying beside him, staring at the ceiling while he slept peacefully, something inside me went quiet. Not broken. Decided. The days after that anniversary were a haze of polite smiles and quiet suffering. I went to work, met clients, answered emails, all while feeling as though the air around me had thickened. Nathan never noticed the way my laughter had lost its lightness, or the subtle withdrawal from the conversations he dominated. He thought I was just tired, or perhaps bored. But the truth was far deeper. I was waking up, slowly, painfully, but undeniably. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed one evening, the soft glow of my bedside lamp catching the curve of my cheek, and thinking, I can't keep letting someone else define my value. The necklace from my anniversary dinner still lay in my drawer, untouched. A reminder that love could be both beautiful and cruel. That night, I made a promise to myself. I would no longer shrink, no longer apologize for existing. Enter Vanessa Reed, a mentor I met at a professional networking event. Mid-40s, sharp eyes, an aura of calm authority. She saw potential in me I didn't yet recognize. The first time we spoke, over coffee and unfinished muffins, she told me, Lauren, you're underestimating yourself. Stop hiding. You've got everything you need to succeed, use it. Her words were a spark. I started small, consulting quietly for friends' businesses, learning the ropes of marketing and finance at night while maintaining the facade of the dutiful, slightly overshadowed wife during the day. Every evening, I returned home with my mind buzzing, ideas spilling over into notebooks filled with scribbled plans, charts, and dreams. The apartment became my sanctuary and my laboratory. I was building a life unseen, a version of myself no one expected. The first victory was small but meaningful, a client who trusted me with a minor campaign, then expanded it, then recommended me to others. My confidence began to grow in tandem with my bank account. Nights of doubt still came, but I fought them by reminding myself of the anniversary night, the humiliation, the quiet fire it had ignited. Financial independence followed, then emotional clarity. I started to reclaim parts of myself I had lost, the courage to voice opinions, the habit of laughing without fear, the audacity to dream bigger than Nathan ever allowed. I learned to enjoy the quiet strength of a woman standing on her own 2 feet, even when the world thought she was fragile. And through it all, I kept my growth invisible. Nathan remained unaware. Our conversations were polite, clipped, and superficial. He joked about my lack of ambition. I smiled, nodded, and let him believe I hadn't changed. There was power in being underestimated. There was freedom in invisibility. By the time the divorce papers were drafted, I had a career, a financial portfolio, and a sense of self-worth stronger than I had ever known. The woman who had once smiled through humiliation in a crowded restaurant was gone, replaced by someone who didn't just survive humiliation, she had built a kingdom from it. And Nathan Collins would soon find out that kingdoms have doors no one can unlock without permission. It was a crisp Thursday morning when I decided it was time. I dressed carefully, not to impress Nathan, but to remind myself of who I had become. A tailored gray suit, soft ivory blouse, heels that clicked sharply against the polished floor of the law office. My hair pulled back neatly, a small silver bracelet catching the light, the only concession to sentimentality. Lauren Hayes was no longer a shrinking, apologetic wife. She was deliberate, composed, and unshakable. Nathan Collins arrived late, of course. Always the dramatic entrance, as if the world rotated around him. He straightened his tie, adjusted his cufflinks, and gave me a smile that once made my stomach flutter. Now it barely registered. I had outgrown it. The lawyer slid the folder across the mahogany table. Thick, crisp pages, neatly organized. The divorce papers. Nathan picked it up, scanning through, his eyes narrowing. He looked up at me, expecting perhaps confusion, hesitation, or pleading. He found none.
Just calm.
Lauren, his voice faltered. I thought we could talk. I raised a hand gently, a gesture of control. Nathan, this is the conversation. Please, read the documents first. He flipped through the pages, brow furrowing. Wait, what's this about assets? The property? The investments? I thought. I leaned back slightly, letting the silence do the work. The law office was quiet except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. Every tick of the clock felt like a drumbeat leading to revelation. He scanned the financial statements, the clear division of property, the clause outlining his absence of claim on my business. His mouth opened, closed, and opened again. You own all of this? His voice was incredulous, a mixture of disbelief and panic. This wasn't here before. I let a small smile curve my lips. It wasn't something I needed you to see, Nathan. I've been building this quietly for 2 years. Every late night, every consultation, every small client, it's all here. My name, my business, my net worth. I am fully independent. Fully prepared. He leaned back in his chair, the color draining from his face. I don't understand. How did you? I learned what it felt like to be humiliated in public. I interrupted softly, voice steady but cold. I learned that no one will protect you if you let them define your worth. So, I protected myself. And now, you'll see clearly what that night on our anniversary cost you. Nathan's jaw tightened. He looked down at the documents again, then back at me. For the first time in years, he was quiet. No sarcasm. No laughter. No performance. Just raw, unmasked disbelief. I stood and gathered my things, glancing at him one last time. The papers aren't just legal, I said gently. They're symbolic. You humiliated me in public. I've only returned the gesture quietly, decisively, and on my terms. Consider it closure for both of us. As I walked out, the city outside felt alive in a way it hadn't before. The air seemed lighter, brighter. I realized then that the humiliation he had inflicted could never touch me again. I had rewritten the story, and he was merely a footnote. I stepped into the sunlight, heels clicking against the pavement, carrying nothing but my dignity, my success, and a quiet, unshakable satisfaction. The divorce papers had done what his words could not. They had humbled the man who once thought he could break me. After the initial shock, Nathan tried everything he always had when faced with a challenge he couldn't control: charm, guilt, and a desperate attempt to rewrite the narrative in his favor. He called my office twice that afternoon. Once, he left a voice message laced with nostalgia. Lauren, we can fix this. I know I hurt you. I deleted it without listening. The second time, he appeared at my doorstep, looking the way he always did when he thought I'd bend. Confident, smirking, expecting tears or apologies. I opened the door calmly. My hair was pulled into a loose braid. My office jacket draped over my arm. No trace of the shy, hurt woman he remembered. The scent of jasmine from my living room diffuser filled the space. He paused, taking it in. I let him. Lauren, he started. His voice was uncertain, almost fragile. I held up a hand. Nathan, I'm no longer the woman you humiliated in front of your friends, family, or colleagues. That woman doesn't exist. The rules have changed. He looked around, noticing the subtle details that spoke louder than any words: the carefully curated artwork, the certificates on the wall of my newly acquired business, the sleek, modern office corner I'd set up in my home. Each object whispered the story of the woman he'd underestimated. His eyes widened slightly as realization dawned. You think you've won, he muttered. I shook my head, smiling softly. I haven't won, Nathan. I've reclaimed what's mine. My dignity, my future, my life. You, on the other hand, are facing the consequences of your own actions. I outlined my terms, clear and unwavering. No contact beyond what is legally required. No attempts to manipulate, guilt, or coerce. If you want a relationship with our friends or family, you will do so with respect. You will pursue your own growth instead of trying to tether me to your past mistakes. His lips pressed together. And if I refuse? You won't, I said simply, meeting his gaze. But if you do, the results will speak for themselves. I'm not asking for revenge. I'm setting boundaries. This is your opportunity to reflect and grow. For once, Nathan, your choices must be about yourself, not about controlling me. I could see the panic flicker in his eyes. He had never been forced to confront consequences so squarely. Every sarcastic comment, every public humiliation, every belittling joke now weighed on him in silence. And I stayed calm, watching, feeling no need to add anything else. The power had shifted. The balance of our past was undone. I realized in that moment how much strength it took not to gloat, not to mock, not to retaliate verbally. True power lay in restraint, in letting the evidence of my life, my success, and my dignity speak louder than any angry words could. "Goodbye, Nathan," I said, turning away. My heels clicked steadily against the hardwood floor as I walked toward the living room, leaving him with the weight of his own choices. For the first time, he understood what humiliation truly felt like. Quietly, internally, alone. And this time, it wasn't just embarrassment, it was a lesson he could not undo. Weeks passed, and life settled into a rhythm I had long dreamed of, but never allowed myself to fully embrace. Mornings were quiet, filled with the soft aroma of coffee and the distant hum of the city waking up. Evenings were mine entirely, filled with work, laughter with friends, and moments of stillness where I could finally hear my own thoughts clearly, without interruption, without judgment. I watched Nathan from a distance, through mutual friends' subtle updates or the occasional public post. He seemed smaller now, not in stature, but in presence. The confidence he had wielded like armor had eroded, replaced by a hesitant awareness that the world no longer revolved around him. I felt no glee in it. Instead, a deep, quiet satisfaction settled in my chest. Justice had arrived without anger, without theatrics. I reflected often on the anniversary night that had set everything in motion. The humiliation, once sharp and suffocating, had been a catalyst. And the small silver bracelet I had touched so many times during those lonely nights, my reminder of resilience, now rested on my wrist, gleaming like a quiet talisman of growth. Every time I looked at it, I remembered. Strength is built in silence, in patience, and in reclaiming oneself, one deliberate step at a time. My friends noticed the change. My mentor, Vanessa, noticed the ease with which I now walked into rooms, the subtle confidence that didn't demand attention but naturally commanded respect. And I noticed it most of all when I looked in the mirror each morning, no longer a reflection of a woman molded by someone else's cruelty, but of a woman who had chosen her own path, her own value. I met Nathan once more briefly, at a professional event neither of us had planned to attend together. He glanced at me, eyes wide, as if to search for the old Lauren. But she wasn't there. He saw instead a woman radiant, poised, and entirely unshakable. I offered a polite nod, a fleeting acknowledgement, and walked away. Not because I needed him to recognize me, but because I no longer needed anyone else to validate my worth. As I stepped onto the terrace afterward, the wind catching my hair, the city sprawling endlessly beneath me, I smiled softly. I had survived humiliation. I had turned silence into power. I had rewritten my story. And in that moment, I understood clearly, completely, and irrevocably. Dignity, once claimed, cannot be taken away. I exhaled, letting the air fill my lungs fully, and whispered to myself, half prayer, half declaration. I am enough. I always was. And now, the world knows it too.